Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we are talking springtime spinnerbaits. We've been talking quite a bit about spinnerbaits over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, hinting at what's coming. I know some of you guys are still under ice, some of you guys are full-blown spawn, and a lot of you are right there in the middle. So this is something we need to talk about. We talked about using that A-rig as a transitional bait. We talked about once you get out of that, following that rising water. A lot of you are going to face that soon. Even those of you that aren't are going to have fish rushing up into the shallows pre-spawn and spawn, and that is prime time for the spinnerbait. A lot of people like to throw a spinnerbait in the fall. It works extremely well, but if I could only choose one time, it would be early spring to focus your attention on that spinnerbait. Because as we've said in other videos, it's that rare time where those truly giant fish get up there in those shallows and are aggressive. They have something to defend, they're in the cover, they are triggerable, if you will, and they're also in large groups where you can activate that entire school and get them fired up and get them biting. So the spinnerbait is one of the key players for that style of fishing. Now I'm going to run you through a lot of different baits, but what I really want to do is talk to you guys about differences in color, in weight, in size, how to modify them, trailers. We're going to cover all that stuff in this video. It's going to get intense here for a little bit. Like every video, down in the video description, I'll link all of this stuff so you don't have to worry about it. In fact, what we'll do is I'll pick out a bunch of my favorite spinnerbaits and we'll organize them by size, so that you based on what I teach you right here, you can turn around and figure out what's best for your lake, so you have a starting point and you know where to go from there. So I won't get caught up too much in what these specific baits are, but in that description we'll give you all of it. So right off the bat, let's talk about color. Where do you go in the springtime, right? You have so many options. And what do? What are you trying to imitate? Are you trying to imitate bluegill? Are you trying to imitate shad? Are you trying to imitate, I don't know what that would imitate. What is it that your fish are eating? That's important to understand. If you are fishing in a pond or in a small body of water, odds are very high that you're imitating bluegill. Now, this is a giant spinnerbait. Crazy looking trailer. Don't worry about all that. I'm just talking about the actual color of the spinnerbait itself. It's a bluegill colored spinnerbait. If you are in that environment, if you know that your fish are bluegill eaters, go bluegill. Don't worry about all the other colors, unless your water is crazy chocolate milk. If it's crazy chocolate milk, you're gonna use more chartreuse to get those fish activated. But in general, that basic bluegill profile is going to work for you. I do recommend, if you're imitating bluegill, that you go with a larger blade size. Notice some spinnerbaits have little tiny blades, some have much larger blades. Larger is better when imitating bluegills and other panfish because their overall body shape is larger. You get a different sound out of that bigger blade. That's probably for another video, getting into the sounds of the various blades, but understand that it's not just a vibration difference, it's an actual sound difference. And those larger blades do a better job. So if you know your fish are on bluegills, you go bluegill, go with larger blades. Gold is a great accent color. Silver will still work. And then if you get that crazy off-colored water, you go to that bright chartreuse, and that'll really help you. For the rest of us, guys that aren't really in those bluegill fisheries, you got to match the hatch a little bit. And there are really only 3 varieties that I'll use, and that's something with a chartreuse, something with that white or silver, and then something gold. And I mean, there are exceptions, of course. There is a time and a place to throw a day-glow orange spinnerbait. There's a time and a place to throw a red spinnerbait or a black spinnerbait. Don't think that I'm neglecting that. I'm telling you where you want to start, where your odds are the highest. And it would be one of those 3, something chartreuse, something white or silver, and something gold. And it's not a huge investment to get a handful of spinnerbaits. You're not breaking the bank. Granted, you want to get your best bang for your buck and your best shot at producing fish. So if I could only go with one color, period, it would be that silverish white. That is the color where if I just was gonna have one to go out there and see if I liked throwing a spinnerbait, that's the way I would go every single time. And then you can branch out from there into that, chartreuse accent versus a full chartreuse. Pretty simple there. Weight wise, it depends how deep you're fishing, and it depends how thick the cover is. And the reason I say that is that if you're trying to stay above the cover or you're fishing extremely shallow, a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait is golden. But my number one spinnerbait is definitely a 1/2 ounce. That is just your do everything. You can fish it shallow, but you got to put a little speed on it, speed that thing up. You can fish it deep just by slowing down. It works really well in both categories, but if you're really focused on one or the other, then you can go lighter or heavier. The other one I throw is a 3/4. And I do throw a 3/4 a fair bit as well. We've thrown that recently when we're fishing down in deeper water, because if you just barely slow roll, that guy will just flutter down really well, parallel to bottom. That 3/4 stays in the strike zone extremely well. But again, if I was only going to have one, it would be a 1/2 ounce. So we're talking about a 1/2 ounce in a white/silver kind of a color. I am a huge advocate of willow blades. You'll notice as I hold up spinnerbaits, it's very rare that I get to one that has something other than willow blades on it. Now don't get me wrong, I own them. I own Colorados, I own Indianas, I own some crazy stuff that people have tried making. There are a lot of options out there, but for most of the country, in most water conditions, where most of the fish are feeding on small to moderate size bait fish, you cannot beat a willow. Now there will be exceptions, there will be days where one works better than another, but again, we're talking about how to streamline this and make it as easy as possible for you. The willow leaf is the place to start. And don't get too caught up on size. Again, size has to do with the size of the bait fish that you're trying to imitate, number one. And two, you can use it to modify the speed of the bait. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, okay? And I have to reel it at a certain speed to keep it along the bottom. But I find that on that day, the bass are really aggressive. And if I'm going faster, I'm catching more fish. But I don't have a 3/4 ounce bait. Without a 3/4, I can't go faster and still stay in the strike zone. Well, easy solution to that is you take that larger blade off and you replace it with that smaller, willow blade. You drop down a size or two, then this blade has much less resistance in the water. Even though I'm still using that same 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, I change that main blade and I'm able to go faster and maintain my depth. If I had a bigger bait on, it would want to rise. But because I go to a smaller blade, it doesn't. I'm able to track better in the water. So don't be afraid to play with blade size. And I want to emphasize that again. Do not be afraid to play with blades on spinnerbaits. They're cheap, really cheap. So in the description, again, I know we talk about that all the time. I'm going to link you not only the blades that I would get, but color recommendations and size recommendations, because it's very inexpensive. You've already got some spinnerbaits, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're buying your first spinnerbaits. But either way, a very small addition to that is to buy a handful of aftermarket blades. Buy some white, buy some silver, buy some chartreuse, buy some gold, and you've literally covered the entire gamut. Because what happens next is, I'm out there on the water, say I'm right here, I'm throwing all white on white on white, because my water is murky. And I start finding that I'm getting a lot of bites, but they seem to be eating the blades, and I'm not hooking up. Well, my solution is tie on a completely different spinnerbait, try something different, or just a very quick blade change. Open the split ring, pull that blade off, throw a silver blade on, and I find, what do you know, now they're not honed in on this back here. Now when they come in tight, they're not seeing the silver, they're seeing the skirt, and they start eating the spinnerbait properly. Or if I'm fishing and they're just eating the tail. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make with spinnerbaits is that they'll put their bright accent color in the trailer. You do not need your spinnerbait and your trailer to match. Keep that in mind. I mean, look at that. That's golden white blades, true chartreuse spinnerbait with a true white Kitech trailer. Why do I do that? So this is for very, very muddy water. I mean, zero visibility water. I like to throw this. Because the white and white, they create a lot of presence in the water. They show very, very well. And I've got so poor of visibility that the gold is really, it's neither here nor there. That flash is not penetrating well. The fish aren't seeing the flash. So that white, that bold color works better. They can hone in on it. They can track it. But when they get in close, what I don't want is for them to bite back here because I don't have a trailer hook. So if I've got a bright color here, they might eat the swim bait and miss the hook altogether. So I've used white on white paired with chartreuse. They're coming in on the vibration, they're coming in on the color, but when they get there, the boldest thing that they see is the skirt and the head, so they eat it completely. You don't want to make that mistake. If I took this spinnerbait, where I'm all silver, and I put a chartreuse trailer on it because the fish are having trouble finding it, what you're going to find is that they eat the trailer. They eat back here. They're biting the tail of that trailer and they're not getting the hook. Same thing with blades. A spinnerbait like this, where that large blade is way out back. Some days it's okay because they're engulfing the bait, but other days they're not. So there's three options. One is add a trailer hook to get a hook farther back. When I was younger, I believed in putting as many hooks on a spinnerbait as you could get. I mean, the bigger the better. I would tell people my favorite trailer was a 6/0 hook. And I caught plenty of fish doing it. So that is an option. Put a big hook out there. The downside is that you really lose the weedlessness. It really changes where you can throw the bait. So your other two solutions are drop down to a smaller blade size so that everything is pulled forward a little bit, or add a trailer. Because if you add that trailer in there, you'll find that instantly that is the draw, right? They feel the vibration of the blades. And if they come in and there's nothing to distract them from the blades are what they're going to eat. But when they come in hot and they're about to eat that bait and they see that swim bait kicking along, it looks more natural than the blades. They go for the swim bait and they get it completely. So again, your options are shrink your blade size, add a trailer, or add a trailer hook. I am always an advocate for adding a trailer, and that came from years of fishing spinnerbaits. Like I said, I used to fish a lot of trailer hooks. I will not use a trailer hook now unless I absolutely have to. The reason, like I said, is that you lose all the weedlessness. I don't think most anglers take full advantage of a spinnerbait, especially in shallow water in cover. Spinnerbaits with a swim bait on them are unbelievably weedless, unbelievably. I mean, you can throw this thing over the top of a dock, you can throw it through a tree, back in the tules, through the bulrushes, I mean deep in the cover. And as long as you point right at it and maintain a steady speed, it will walk through anything. I mean, it will walk over, under, around, through the logs, does not matter. They come through like you can't imagine, and I think most guys are afraid to try it. Next time you're on the lake, if you're around some thick vegetation, take that. Now, I'm not telling you go throw it across the highway and see what happens, but pitch it back in that cover deeper than you normally would. You'll be surprised. It's going to come out of there, and that's going to open some doors for you. You're going to realize that there are fish in there that you have not been reaching, that you can now reach. You can dig deeper to get to those fish. And if you stay with a swim bait trailer instead of a spare hook trailer, you can dig in there. Now, color-wise, again, we're keeping it really, really simple. Same thing with my trailers. I tend to use a white base, some sort of a clear or silver base, and then some sort of a chartreuse base. And now how natural you need to be, has to do with watercolor and what you're imitating. If you're imitating a shad eater or a little minnow eater, you're trying to catch a fish that is a shad eater or a minnow eater, you're imitating those bait fish, you want to go really natural. Something like a Kitech, a skinny dipper, a generic swim bait trailer. That's the way you want to go to get that really natural look and profile. But if you're playing in that murky water, sometimes it doesn't matter, and you can go with things like this, like a salad spoon, or some of the Rage products where they're just big, thumping all over the place, just to help those fish hone in on it. But the cleaner and the clearer the water, the more you're going to lean to the natural colors, the silvers, the grays, the whites. The crazier that water gets, the more you're going to turn to that solid white, to that solid chartreuse. And then somewhere there in the middle between those two is really where gold is a big player, where the water is clearing but it's not clear, or it's getting dingy but it's not chocolate milk. That's where that gold blade, gold skirt really becomes a player, is right there in the middle, because gold shows extremely well in dingy water. Maybe not in mud, because in mud it's not catching the light. It's not reflecting that light. But in dingy water, it reflects and it spreads that light so well to help those fish come in. And then again, as you start to clear up, start transitioning back to those silver blades. Guys, it really is that easy. Overall size has to do with the size of fish, the bait fish that you're trying to imitate. Don't worry about the size of the bass you're trying to catch. Worry about what they're eating. Whether you need a little tiny bait with a little tiny blade, or a great big bait with a great big blade, or somewhere right there in the middle. You buy a handful of spinnerbaits and a handful of colors, and then you focus your attention on buying different blades instead of buying more spinnerbaits. You will save a lot of money, you'll become more versatile, you can adapt to changing conditions, and you can catch more fish very, very simply. Hope that helps you guys. Focus in this spring when those bass are up shallow and they get in that cover right before the spawn and into the spawn, or if you get some blowout storms coming in and your lakes start to rise, immediately go up shallow. Put time in on that spinnerbait. Don't be afraid to bang your way through that cover. Hit dock pilings, hit bushes, hit brush, hit those lay down logs, hit the grass. Bang your way through that stuff. The spinnerbait is very weedless and you will catch more fish this spring. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We'll talk to you soon.